'cause you feel my mind, or you feel my mind. We could build a dream, start up something new, and the world is on your shoulders, and you feel like falling over. Just let me in your head, so I can be there for you, there for you. The night is young, won't you sing for me? Won't you sing for me? Till we fall asleep. The night is young, won't you sing for me? Won't you sing for me? Till we fall asleep. The night is young, won't you sing for me? Won't you sing for me?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to VC Masters on the Pod TV Network. I'm Nick Pallavino. Won't be your host for today, but we'll introduce the person who is going to talk to you more about venture capital, IPO, and the marketplace that you need to know about if you're going to venture into the venture capital market space. And that, of course, is Dr. Salman Azar, who's also the head of the Azimuth Funds, as well as a professor at Duke University. So he's going to give us an update and to our viewers in the United States and around the world, of course, on LinkedIn and LinkedIn groups that receive all this. So Dr. Azar, we're going to turn over the ship to you and give us an update what's going on in this huge asset allocation world, otherwise known as VCs.
Wonderful. Well, asset allocation is actually a better word than VC because, first of all, nobody talks about VCs, and if they talk about VCs, they don't even know what VCs are or who VCs are. So it has been actually a great couple of weeks since last time we met on the IPO market. A lot of IPOs are doing well. We have an index that keeps track of it, and that's up about 23% over the past 6 months, which is really great. Just to kind of give you an idea, it was down significantly before that. We still have an issue with IPOs and the pace that they are coming at. I had an interesting conversation with VC GPT, which is like the Chat GPT's version of for VCs. And I asked it, how long is it going to take for us to eliminate the backlog in IPOs? And ChatGPT says, well, there are about 200 or so IPOs that are waiting, and we are going at the rate of about 200. So it will take a year for us to catch up with IPOs. And then I asked VC GPT, what about the new companies that are going to get ready to go public during this time? And VC GPT says, excellent questions. And then it revised its estimates and says here that, ultimately it's really about inflow and outflow, which is like in any queue or any line that you have, that when people enter and people exit, if your people are entering faster than they're exiting, then there's going to be a backlog of line. Like if you go to an amusement park, you will see that there's a huge backlog, and that's just simply because that the people entering is still being faster than the people that are on the other side. And when you get to later in the evening, you will see that the lines are shorter because the people exiting becomes faster than people entering. So the people exiting are usually about the same rate in amusement parks. It's really the entrance that controls that. In the VC world or the VC IPO world is the exit that controls that, because the companies in terms of inflow are typically kind of calibrate their expectations. And there are, a lot of companies that haven't really announced publicly that they are ready to go IPO. So I believe that backlog is going to continue for another year or two. But the good news is that things are getting better, which means that some of the VC friends, and including myself, would hopefully see some cash back in the near future. So, a number of questions come up at this time. And one of the questions is that, hey, how about the discounts that we are getting right now in the pre-IPO market? And this is something that we are kind of struggling with in some ways. I'm really, in some ways, for us who are in this pre-IPO market, it is good to have the IPO backlog because that enables us to get the discounts. But then we need the exits also in order for us to get cash and recycle it back into the market. And that liquidity is basically the challenge, and until that remains the challenge, we are going to see the discounts, and until we see the discounts, we will see the backlog. So it's kind of like a catch-22 situation for us, that the moment the IPO market frees up, we will stop seeing discounts, and we will have to look for some other way of making money in this market.
Yeah, as an investor, in other words, an accredited investor who's looking at this market space, when is the best time to invest? When I follow the IPO market, it looks like if you buy right after the IPO, you can usually do pretty good. If you hold too long, you can do pretty bad. In other words, it jumps up after the IPO, and then it crashes just shortly thereafter. But what about this pre-IPO discount? How does an accredited investor get involved in that? I know when they go public you can, but how do you get involved prior to IPO?
So this is for accredited investors only, that they can come and talk to a VC like us. And what we typically do, just the way our business model is, that we get an allocation of about $10 to $30 million in a particular name or a particular company. And then we put in a few $1 million ourselves. And then we raise the rest of the money from our partners, our investment partners. And those investment partners are accredited investors or family offices, or sometimes funds of funds, companies that basically are in this space, that basically don't have the expertise or access that we have. And they buy that access by going through us. And our kind of business model is really simple. We don't have a management fee unlike a number of PE firms. We just make money when you make money on what we called a carry. So just talk to us or talk to anybody like us, and we'll be happy to kind of show you what the risks are and where you can make money. Typically, the most money is made before an IPO. There is a window of making money in the first 6 months after an IPO. You don't want to be holding after 6 months, and I can go into the details why. And then obviously, then it becomes just like any other company, like Google, Amazon, or even smaller companies like General Motors. And by the way, if you look at market cap, General Motors is a minuscule company compared to Google's and Amazon's.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, General Motors is it's funny to see that the General Motors is not that big when it comes to its overall net worth. It's just interesting to see that all the big money is moved into the technology sector. So we're talking about the sector, which we're talking about now, the VC sector. It's kind of a strange world for a lot of people because you're limited to being a accredited investor until it becomes an IPO. Let's imagine we do have some people that are interested in doing a certain amount of their asset allocation into the VC market space. Okay, how do you define accredited investor? In other words, how can I know that they're an accredited investor or not?
Yeah, so they have to have a certain net worth, and I think the net worth is 1 million, or they have to have a certain income, which is $200,000 a year for a single person and $300,000 a year for a married couple. And recently, I think a few years ago, SEC has also allowed exemptions for a knowledgeable investor. So if you are knowledgeable about these things, then you are an accredited investor, which means that somebody who obviously has a broker dealer, even if they don't have the net worth or the income level, which probably they would have anyway, they would be a knowledgeable investor. An employee of that company would be considered knowledgeable as well. That's, you should really consult, SEC rules and stuff. I'm not an authority on that and they also keep on changing. But generally, it's either income, it's total net worth, which income, I believe, is 200 for single, 300 for married couple. It is the total net worth, I believe, is $1 million. And finally, the idea of a knowledgeable investor, which is kind of a relatively new one, historically speaking.
Okay, when you do run across family offices, okay, and we do beam into a lot of family offices, and there's a huge group that we work with that has they're basically family offices for not huge families, but medium size and type net worth. How much of an asset allocation are you seeing into the venture capital market? In other words, if they're going to allocate, let's say they have $2 million going to allocate, how much do you see that's allocated into the IPO market?
Yeah, so family offices would typically have tens of millions of dollars to allocate. So perhaps if they have 100 million to allocate, they would roughly, I would say, be allocating about half of that into the VC world, simply because that's where the highest returns they can get. The high. So if they are looking for capital appreciation, this is basically their ticket. A VC market is their ticket. If they are looking for income, they may go for PE world, which is better for income. And if they want liquidity, they would go to the capital markets. So they would have like an allocation rate. So I guess I should step back and say the kind of family offices who invest in VCs would invest about half of their total allocation into VC. And then the rest would be just for diversification for other things. And there are family offices that would be much more conservative, that would just allocate something in public markets, or do a little bit of PE, may even do a little bit of bonds. I personally, I don't know how you make money in bonds because they hardly beat inflation. So I mean, I guess you have an inflation hedge with bonds, or I shouldn't say hedge, but you basically neutralize inflation with bonds. But other than that, you really don't increase your buying power with bonds. The only way to make money in bonds is selling bonds and buying bonds. I mean, the brokers and those people are the ones that are making all the money and taking commissions.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you agree with that?
Well, the thing is, it's like you have a JD. It just depends. Okay. The thing is, if you have a certain amount of people are very conservative. In other words, they're not so interested in the return on principal, but the return of principal. So,
Yes.
And even our friend Mark Cuban, who probably is not listening to this. Okay. The thing is, he took half his net worth and put it in U.S. Treasuries, which you cannot be more conservative than that. And then uses the other half to play with. And he bought at one time the Dallas Mavericks, homes, and all this other type of stuff. So it's really a preference. My business partner, who is a OSJ and securities license, has a small $60 or $70 million under management. He has people fill out an investor profile to see what their risk tolerance is. And so we do see allocations toward bonds because they're not going anywhere investment wise, but they're not losing their shirt either. And some of our small business or business owners that we work with, they go, I've got a lot of risk in my business, so they don't want to take risk in their investment portfolio. When the allocations are 50%, I think that's pretty aggressive to put that much of your allocation into a VC market space, which does historically have a better rate of return than you will in the S&P 500. But you have to also be very careful and know what you're doing to get those returns. In other words, it's not like they're handing them out like hotcakes. You got to be able to balance your winners and losers. So how do you do it since you run this Azimuth fund? How do you balance the winners and the losers? In other words, you're going to have a certain amount of losers, but you're also going to have winners. How do you balance that?
Yeah, so different people balance it in a different way. You talked about Mark. Mark is an interesting creature, by the way. He would have like half of it in cash or whatever, almost half of it in cash. And the rest, he is like taking wild risks. I mean, he's like, out there, right? So most of us, normal people, are more kind of like, kind of controlling a band. And we are not really completely going this way or the other. There is kind of like a percentage of allocation across. So in our case, we balance the risk by getting discounts when we buy shares of a particular company. And that is really the key. The way we make money is when we buy. A lot of people make money when they sell. We make money when we buy. And the reason we make money when we buy is that we are buying at a discount. And the reason we are buying at a discount is because of the liquidity crunch. A number of VC funds that are in their last year or so are desperate to sell. And that desperation means that we can usually get 40% off the fair market value of a particular security. Now, you would say, how do you get 40% off? the fair market value. But it is kind of like buying candy the day after Halloween. If I want candy in my house to consume myself so that I can get diabetic, for example, and that's, by the way, a joke. I don't eat candy to get diabetic, but let's assume that I am that way, right? I eat a lot of candy. I'm going to buy it on November 1st, not on October 31st, which is effectively what we do, is that we buy it at a discount after the VCs have already invested in it. So these VCs typically invested 10 years ago. They're getting like 20 times their money back, and they're happy with that. And they're able to give discounts in order to get cash. So we get discount and we give cash to these people. Now, a natural question is that why are these funds in the last year or so? Well, they're effectively actually in the last year or so, just like a dying person. They are dying, and the only thing they can do is either sell things and get cash, or they can will that or give that to somebody else, which in this world is called continuation vehicle. And the reason they are in that situation is because legally, when these funds were created, they had a life of, let's say, 12 years maximum. And after that, they have to die. They have kind of signed a death warrant at the time that they were born. It's kind of like making a deal with Satan. Here, the deal with a VC is, or deal actually in this case with the investors into the VC fund, is that we will return your money in 12 years, no matter what. And because of COVID, but mostly because of inflation, we have a huge number of companies that delayed their IPO. And now these VCs that were expecting this money back in their 12th year at the latest don't have their money back, and it's kind of like a fire sale.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing I was going to talk to you next about. It's the holding period. So the accredited investor puts their money into the fund. What is the average holding period before they will get their money back? In other words, how long are they going to have to keep the money in the fund?
In our strategy, the holding period is 1 to 4 years. We are looking at some companies that are expected to go public within a year. We are looking for companies that would go public in 3 to 4 years. At no time are we looking at companies that is longer than that. Now, when we do our calculations, the minimum return we want in N years is N plus 1 times your money back, which means that if 1 year we want 2 times the money back, in 4 years we want 4 plus 1, 5 times the money back. That's kind of like how we are looking at these things. So depending on how long the holding period is, we are generating more and more cash. And typically we are targeting returns over 50% year over year. And we can do that simply because we are investing in companies that have a discount, growing 50% year over year, are positive EBITDA or close to positive EBITDA, so they don't need another round of funding. And if there's another round of funding comes in, it dilutes the shares. So these criteria help us get something like a 40 to 50% discount, get 40 to 50% year over year growth, which means that we have like over 50% IRR or rate of return. Now, what I won't be able to get with this strategy is 171x return that I caught in one company called Amplitude, where my cost basis was a few cents per share, and the Amplitude went public at several dollars per share. So that kind of upside is not in our strategy. We are comfortable with 5x return, which a lot of VCs are not. But then we don't want to hold for 10 years and have a company die on us in this particular case.
Okay. Now, what sort of sectors are you looking at when you're getting these types of returns? Because not all sectors move very quickly. The financial services sector, which I've been involved for 40 years, does not move very quickly. So what sort of sectors are you looking at that will get these types of returns, these 5 times returns?
So anything we are looking at has some kind of a tech component. And the reason is not because we want a tech component as a focus or a sector. The reason for that is simply that we are looking for 40 to 50% year over year growth. And the only way we can get that is tech. For example, finance sector, we can get that kind of growth in fintech.
Right.
companies that are making technology for financial services, but we can't get that kind of growth in just a simple financial services company or a bank or Goldman Sachs or anything like that, or any company similar to that.
Yeah, and I've been to national fintech conferences in Las Vegas. That's where I met a gentleman by the name of John Scully. He was the former CEO of Apple Computer, and he invested in fintech, and we interviewed him on the Pod TV network, which was pretty cool. But fintech, I'm not sure if that's moving as fast as it used to. So what are the hot, in other words, sectors are hot today and cold tomorrow.
Yeah.
Even though there were like 11,000 people at the conference, and I was impressed that there was that many at a fintech conference. But what are the hot sectors today? What are you looking at today?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Fintech in general as a sector is not moving fast. There are some, very niche fintechs that are moving, increasing in value. So the hottest sector these days is anything to do with AI. If you slap .ai in front of, after a website, you have a value to that. If you can get the website nick.ai registered, or I can get salman.ai registered, hey, that in itself has like a few $1 million worth of value. I'm being half cynical, but I keep on kind of going back to this, and I just can't get over this company that wanted to solve the New York City parking problem, put a .ai after their name, and wanted a $50 million valuation, which means that the company, before any money is put in, it is valued already at $50 million. I won't disclose the name of the company, but let's say it's blah blah.ai. It has nothing there except a website, and it has this idea. Now, professional VCs don't invest in us. Yeah, people in country clubs invest in that. And that's another warning that I have for people. Country clubs are historically known for bad deals. These are a lot of accredited investors are in country clubs. So I apologize for all the country club goers. You should go to country club. You should enjoy the golf. You should enjoy the food, the service, everything. But, when your fellow country clubber comes up to say, hey, why don't you invest in this company called blah blah.ai that solves the New York City parking problem using AI-enabled artificial intelligence? Don't invest in that company. The people who do that have made money. It's kind of like, and I see this, by the way, in like professional athletes as well. They are very, so widely successful in professional athletics, and they suck at investing money because that's something that is not their area of expertise. And all of us have this thing, like, I am good as a VC. I'm not going to go start playing basketball in NBA against LeBron James. Okay, first of all, nobody is going to let me do that. And I, by the way, I run into these investors as well that, so one of the things that we are really doing is we are doing this financial inclusion play, which means that we want VC, especially pre-IPO VC, to be accessible to all eligible investors. And eligible, can be accredited in some way, or can be, as an employee of an accredited company or a professional services company or whatever, as based on knowledge. So as we are doing that, I run into these people that, are full-time employees that work like 12 hours a day, let's say as a software engineer. And they say, oh, we need to evaluate this company. I said, here's a diligence report we have evaluated for you. Here are the risks in this company. Here's the upside in this company. And they're like, no, I have to spend a week doing that. I don't have time. And, I have to bite my tongue. But frankly, they don't have the expertise to do that. They don't have time to do that. Time is like less of the issue. And I tell them, look, if I were to apply to your job, first of all, I won't apply to your job, right? Because I'm not qualified. If I apply to your job, I wouldn't get an interview. If I get an interview, I wouldn't get hired. But let's say I get hired, somebody makes a hiring mistake. I would get fired in a week because I can't do your job. And it's not because of lack of time. I'm willing to spend 12 hours a day like you, or even 16-hour days just to get started. But that's not my area of expertise. And I don't know if you run into the people like that who are very, very you would have a dentist who is really good dentist, but wants to now review legal documents or start a pension fund. You can't do that. You just can't get up and do that.
it isn't happening. And yeah, I do every now and then run into people, generally a financial advisor, that all of a sudden thinks they're a pension attorney, and they're not even close.
Yeah.
And since we know the world of chess, you have to imagine you're a 2200 player, and they're probably about 1300. Yeah. And ELO, they really don't. There's so much they don't understand. But I totally agree with you. The real problem is in the tech sector is that it takes a lot of expertise to do that. And the other thing, it takes a lot of protection. So talk to us a little bit about the world of patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. Because once you have a great idea, it's so easy that it just gets co-opted by a competitor.
Yes. So that's a great question, by the way, and I don't even think about like that's the direction you want me to head. But patents basically help you take the intellectual property, or IP for abbreviation, and assign it to a company. So the company holds that, and that in itself has value. And that means that regardless of persons coming in or out of the company, that patent belongs to the company, or that thing belongs to a company. So I like to use the example of like a plastic water bottle like this. So you can have a patent on making this exact plastic bottle with exact shape and exact this. So if I don't have a Coca-Cola bottle here, but a Coca-Cola bottle is a patented bottle. That shape is patented, which means that nobody else can make a bottle like that and sell a drink like that. And it's their intellectual property. Now, that is one kind of patent, and that's a protective or defensive patent. But there is also a foundational patent. Foundational patent may be that I have a patent of making plastic bottles. So I have like how the process of the mold works, what kind of thing goes into like, shaping the bottle the way it is, and so on. And that's a blocking patent. And that's actually more valuable because now I own the whole plastic bottle industry.
Right.
And nobody else can break into that. That in itself has a huge value because I can license that patent, which is mean I give somebody access to that. Just kind of like if you are using Microsoft Word, it is a license that you're using it in. It doesn't belong to you. You pay Microsoft, and Microsoft allows you to use it, unless you're pirating, which again would be against the law, and you can get caught in that. In which case, in big companies, you would enforce that patent through patent attorneys. You would either force this company to license that patent from you or shut it down. And it depends really what you want to do in these things. So patents are basically one way of doing it. There are trade secrets. Trade secrets still are big in tech, but I am getting less and less comfortable with them, because there is this concept now of taking the key employees away. And at least according to California law, whatever is in your head, you take with you, and it is not something that is patentable. And that's basically what, or not patentable, sorry, you can't sue somebody for taking what the skills they know what is inside their head. So there was a company called Windsurf, and I think OpenAI was planning to acquire them for billions of dollars. That transaction, as it was going on, I don't know if it fell through before or after Google hired its founder, a couple of key employees, licensed some of those patents for long term, and essentially eliminated the entire value of the company Windsurf. I think Windsurf was the name of the company. So they, instead of paying billions of dollars, what people can do is pay millions of dollars and attract the key employees and buy kind of the key technology that is there. So what that means is that patent that stays with the company is really important. As an investor, when we are investing, we make sure that if the founder has a patent, they have assigned it to the company so that it stays with the company. Because another thing that can happen is that the founder has the patent and the company gets the funding, and the founder goes elsewhere and does something else.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think that's also a very important part of investing, is to make sure you really know the quality of the product that you're investing in and the management team that is behind it. But with that, unfortunately we're getting out of time. So we do want to thank Dr. Salman Azar, who's a professor at Duke University. He's also the general partner, right, of the Azimuth Funds also as well. So knows a lot about this particular sector. and we want to introduce it to our clients and our the people in LinkedIn, especially the family office groups, which I know are watching this, and people in and around the world. And we'll see you next time on VC Masters with Dr. Simon Azar. Take care. Bye-bye.
I go anywhere with you, 'cause you fill my mind, or you fill my mind. We could build a dream, start up something new, and the world is on your shoulders, and you feel like falling over. Just let me in your head so I can be there for you.